Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this. This was actually one of the conferences people actually say good morning back to you. I love this. This is really nice. I find it an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. And I thought maybe we'll tell you a little bit of a story about my career, how I ended up being here to be the CISO of General Electric. Combine that a little bit with the story of identity and cybersecurity, which I think is absolutely intertwined, and Richard talked to you about. And then tell you a little bit of story where we have been and where we're going. And I don't know if some of you are tracking, we were in the news yesterday. Anybody? GE is a 120-year-old company that continuously evolves. And I believe that we're on the verge of another major change that it's going to get us to a better set of places. So I'm proud of the company and proud of the team that's here with me. So I started telling about the story of the journey, and my team was talking to me about what to say. And I was just thinking, the one word or statement that came to my mind in growing up and thinking about a career was, you know, they tell you stay on a path. And you stay on that path, and you grow, and you become X. And I thinking about my career, the one thing in my education I didn't do is stay on the path. Started as a chemistry major, made a shift over to information and computer science, and throughout my career, maybe a little bit of ADHD or a desire to constantly change, done many things. Done engineering management, IT management, product. Probably one of my best experiences is running architecture at Cisco in our services business, and stepped into cybersecurity about 15 years ago. And I almost felt like I'm home. This is a good place to be, and I love it. And when I think about the role of a CISO, I think the role is three-part, right? It's you're a one-part technologist, one-part business leader, and a one-part risk advisor to your organization. And when I reflect back to my career and what are some of the things that actually prepared me for that role is, one, that zigzagging that I talked to you about. Being in the business, being in IT, being in technology, it's really enabled me to have that business perspective so that when you're sitting at a table with your business leaders, they're getting ready for a large acquisition, and you give them advice about some threat intelligence that you have about that mergers and how you have to think systematically about your identity strategy as you go about that merger, you come from that business view. Secondly, I guess the big one was leading architecture. And I think the identity architects in the room will identify with this. The mindset of building blocks. It's a learning and a path that you get on where you really think systematically about how to build an architecture and building in building blocks and implementing in small chunks. That was a tremendous learning. And I would say the third learning was about risk. The element of risk practice. It's really key. There is no black and white in cybersecurity. It's always risk threshold, is the culture of the company, and the continuous changing of that threshold that you're maneuvering and managing. And that's as relevant to identity and cybersecurity as anything you do as a CISO. So putting those things in, and then exciting part is really being a female in the cybersecurity industry. It's been tremendous, and you kind of rough it up, you get to the top, and then when you get to the top, you go, I'm going to take others with me. So it's been tremendously exciting for me now to jointly with my team who's sitting here to really sponsor many initiatives around STEM, education, you know, getting female into identity, into really critical role in the organization is kind of part of my charter. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I sponsor many initiatives in the state to really push this, the boundary, this in the company, in my state, and across GE, and we're proud of that. So let's talk a little bit about GE. So again, if any of you flew here on an airplane, you probably came in on a GE jet engine. The lighting and power probably empowered with some of our processes and controllers at GE. The healthcare business, God forbid, if some of you end up at the hospital or just came back from one, you probably dealt with some of the GE healthcare product. It's a company that delivers products and services to customer, and really mapping out the journey, and we just kind of looked at it for the last 20 years, the growth and expansion of GE businesses. There is a direct correlation with how we laid out the identity organization and the growth of and expansion of identity. In the early 2000s, there was massive growth in the business, expansion of our global footprint, aviation, power business, our oil and gas, and kind of toward, I would say, early 2000, there was a period of time with financial crisis, with some market downturn in some of the industries that we operate in. We started to adopt a set of strategies, guys, to really use the services business that we have at GE, data analytics, and at the time we didn't call it digital transformation, but really the data that we know about the service business in support of creating new services, new partnership, new B2B interactions with our customers, where we could use the data to really enable our customers to do better productivity. What I mean by that is, if I could enable a customer of mine, or even implement internally within GE, capability around maintenance schedules, just of our year engine, and timely prediction and forecasting of that information, that directly correlated to multi-million dollars of savings. So what does that mean about identity? What it means is that at a path that we started at the beginning in the late 90s, where every business had their own identity, this expansion of the footprint, new partnership, global expansion, new B2B interaction, really necessitated that we bring the identity team together. We created one central identity team, creation of what we call this shared services model. And I would say Andre would say probably one of the largest platform and SAMO federation that he's ever had to deal with. Moving fast forward, that wasn't enough. We needed to create more productivity for our industrials. Probably we were one of the earlier companies that made this transition to cloud, moving our business workload to the cloud. And in that process, the identity team needed to adjust, right? So you had to really push to this more business set of standards, identity expansion of our services. But I always think about it, it felt like 2 steps forwards, 1 step backward. Why? Because at the same time, we were also acquiring very large companies and taking on their identity systems and practices. So while you're trying to innovate and move forward, you're also grabbing this large legacy of other companies that you're bringing in, and you kind of spaghetti into your environment. So and that's, I would say that's the dichotomy of all of us, right? The operators of identity, you deal with both of those. So fast forward, the place and time that we are today is in our digital transformation, and what we're trying to do for ourselves and for our customers is putting the massive amount of industrial IoT knowledge, millions of touch points of devices, and the analytics of that in support of our customers. So within every business, whether it's avionics in our aviation business, whether there's power system with our remote monitoring, we're trying to build these capabilities. All of that requires an identity construct that's modern, that's scalable, that's free of legacy, and that can meet the timely and the scale requirement of our customers. So keep that in mind as I talk next. And then based on the announcement yesterday, we're spinning some of our businesses. But guess what? They love our services. And then they want to continue to consume them. How do you work through that? So we have some new set of challenges that we're working through as an organization. The challenges that Richard talked to you guys about this just now, and I've talked to my board and the board of the previous companies I've worked on. It's not about investment of people and technology into identity. It's that the bad guys with less money and less capability are ahead of us. And if you look at the 2017 or 18 report, majority of breaches involve some form of weak credential. It's pretty easy, isn't it? My red team thinks it's like so easy, right? You have a phishing email, you have a vulnerable system, and potentially a server that's sitting in front of your critical data that doesn't have multi-factor. It's kind of easy. They get in. And it's not enough that you have good automated provisioning. It's not enough that you do good access review across the organization. It's not enough that your SOX practices are all in order. It's all of these things. So what's the problem? I think the problem is that the business strategy and the identity strategy need to come together. And it comes together in ways of how you think about expansion. It needs to be a component of every mergers and acquisition. It needs to be as part of how you go to cloud and really be incorporated, embedded. And that's really key, and the challenge that all of us are dealing with. And one of the key things that about a couple of years ago, when the identity portfolio came to the cyber organization, I was thrilled about that, because that was one place that we can bring all of this stuff together. But, so we have, let's walk it together. So we have a cyber and product identity team that's together, that's laying out good set of strategy, but still dealing with a ton of legacy. But then your infrastructure team comes and says to you, guess what? I really like Google's Zero Trust model. And this MPLS network that I got, it's a lot of cost. Software-defined networking has made enough stride, and I'd like to shift all of GE to an internet-only model. You go, holy crap. Okay, I think I can do that. So we put a team together to really try to work this model of trust but verify, do not trust, always verify. So what did we have to do? We have to rethink our incident response strategy. We had to rethink our entire cybersecurity portfolio strategy. We had to strengthen our endpoint strategy and really advance in anomaly detection and such. We had to rethink of our CERT response. We had to think about what we call it kind of the red button strategy, how to defend a site that's internet connected in the new model. And the identity team said, we're on board. We want to support this. And I'll talk to you in a moment about what, kind of the plan and strategy they put together. But the challenge is the following. Our infrastructure team wanted to roll out sites, 100 a month. And guess what? We had an identity team that was operating in the old model. Waterfall. One release a year, took 6 months. Sometimes we had to back it out. Massive impact to the organization. So we started a shift, and I will argue with you that it is not possible for a company as scale as GE to really not make this shift and be part of the business strategy to a truly product organization. So we changed roles. We brought product managers. We have product owners. We went on agile delivery, DevOps across the entire identity team. At a time when we did 1 or 2 releases per year, probably 1 or 2 features, now we're going to releases every 2 or 3 weeks with 4 to 6, and we're pushing velocity of 10 to 12 or even more. And I would argue with you that the that integration of identity as almost a managed service model, connected with that fast strategy, is really what's making for us identity that new control. Kind of put it together. Business strategy and identity connected, sponsored by cyber and integrated into the business, really embedded in critical strategy, but more than that, it's really operating differently. And the other component to this, and we talk about this a lot, is how we deal with legacy. I have asked my team to operate and think about dealing with our legacy as a managed service provider. Your large vendors, when they want to go on a new version, they don't call you and say, "Pretty please," do you? Andre, you don't say that. He will say, "I'm off this platform as of date X, and if you want to stay on it, here's your price tag." That's what we're going to do. Because you cannot afford to do both. You cannot manage legacy, deal with the major issues that we're dealing with at the scale that GE is, be at the speed of light in getting onto cloud, and be part of the strategy if you don't do that. And it's very painful. Probably the most painful part of this whole thing, because culturally not acceptable, right? You want to help your business. You want to get them through this. And there's one more thing they got to finish up before they get off of this. I got to get this customer to do. This is a culture shift that we're making. And Randy smiles because he just did one of these with my backing last week. And actually the team was our own team. Didn't want to get off. So that's key, guys, that from a strategy perspective. So what are we doing? What are we building right now? So back to the scale, the flexibility that GE needs, cost-effective. We're going to a new operating model as a company. For us to continue to deliver these services, one, we're creating a complete managed service stack for identity. That's all cloud-based. Key partners are part of this venture with us. Modern authentication, and that allows us to really go after opportunity anywhere in the globe with scale, number one. Number two, big one in our risk management strategy, a risk-based authentication service that really examines multitude of contextual elements, user, device, place, time, to perform and allow access, and looking at different forms of authentication, including FIDO2 authenticator. The third component of our strategy is a digital certification service. We've been good on this front for users, devices, and applications. But one of the things we need to get better at it for our manufacturing floor shop. That's an area that we need innovation, we need focus, we need betterness. In an edge-to-cloud scenario, remember the business model shift that's happening at GE. So much of the data is coming out of manufacturing for us, so we can model, and for our customers, it's coming out of their sites. They want to be able to connect device to user to interaction, and for that, we need certification. And models that doesn't directly tie out to how we do it in the IT side. Some of these certs, you need to have them live for a very, very long time. So that's one other component. And this is big, because in the digital cert, if we can do this with efficiency and end-to-end lifecycle management, you're talking about creation of efficiency of 1%, that would lead into multi-million-dollar savings for our businesses. But in the second, like almost the other side of it, putting the technology stack aside, it's really doing it with build out of an identity governance that's self-service, that's automated, that's API-based. As much as you see our shift of an identity as a product organization, as many of you would attest to, the old days of there be a group that does stuff for you is gone, right? this group of infrastructure that sits between application teams and your cloud instances doesn't exist, and I don't want my guys to be that. So if that is the case, you have to make your services user-friendly, self-service consumable, and API-based, and secure with CI/CD pipeline embedded into the process. And that's really, really key. We're working through that. And one big one, going back to the zero trust story, it's identity intelligence. So if we're shifting to this model aggressively, it's not enough for my logs to just come from my network devices and from desktop. I need user analytics and behaviors to be modeled out in this new world. So we were working on an identity and an analytics service that gets fed into our search strategy for the purpose of anomaly detection. And that's the critical component of the zero trust model, is how we're bringing these pieces together. And I'll just put a big bow around this, guys. Not possible without the organizational shift that's happening within our organization, meaning really shifting toward this product-based strategy, and the mindset shift that we're running identity as a managed service. And your people need to think about it differently. You need to educate your businesses differently. Being a product organization, they will have formal customer advisory boards, and then changing your velocity from a delivery perspective, and being demanding on your partners to really be on the same speed and scale of what you're doing. And it's a big evolution. And it's not possible if your identity teams are working in isolation. It needs to be embedded in your business and cybersecurity strategy. So I'm excited about this. I think it's absolutely tremendous, and it's a journey that we're on, and a journey that will change and evolve as GE business model evolves. And I hope that you see kernels of things that you're doing in your businesses and you see valuable. But as I think about it and want to close, I'm coming off of really a big day at GE yesterday. We made a ton of announcement, positive response from the industry, and but also a lot of thinking inside the company. What does that mean? What it means is that cybersecurity is absolutely still critical for any company to be successful. It's about brand reputation. It's about defending the commercial value of the company. And the way we're going about identity is the right thing. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. So identity as a component of business strategy is key. I think the second thing I would say to all the identity architects and identity developers is that this is an amazing field, and you're here because you believe that. The thing I would suggest to you is that think about it in the context of making it simple, making it consumable, and removing complexity for your businesses. And I think that's really hard, but that's key to success, and we're on that journey. And lastly, to the developers and to the innovators, we still have a lot to do in this space. And I would say to you, specifically for us at GE, the industrial OT space is a big area of innovation we're looking at. For example, we have what we call a digital twin of an engine. We've built a model of an engine where we can simulate multiple states of an engine for the purpose of forecasting and behavioral analytics, so that you don't do it on your actual engine. So this simulation happens in this place, and you can digitally, you take the data, you process it, and then you can put it into some forecasting model about, it could be a jet engine, it could be a power station, all of that. But think about what is identity in terms of that model, right? You have a box, and you have multiple components in that. How do you think about that? How do you think about it when you put it back into your manufacturing side? From interconnection of identity to those subcomponents, to the virtual model, to the actual model, and all of that incorporated into your environment. There is so much, I think, innovation that needs to happen to really connect the user, device, and OT identity. So I would say to you, innovate in that space, because we really are looking for that. And there's tremendous room still for growth in that spaces. I thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I find it an honor, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, everybody.